Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Artist Sessions. I'm Caitlin Hill. I'm the marketing coordinator here at Pomo Arts. I am stepping in tonight as moderator for this episode of the Artist Sessions about performing arts, and Janice will be returning next week to welcome members of the 13 Feet Off the Ground Collective, Melanie Ellery, Tanis Hopkins, and Deb Bakos. I have three fantastic artists with me tonight, here to discuss the impact of the pandemic on the performing arts sector, both on and off stage. I'll begin by introducing each artist, then we'll move into the discussion. At the end, we will open up to questions from our Facebook audience. I'm very excited to welcome Linnea Perry. Linnea Perry is a mixed-race, interdisciplinary theater artist currently living and working on unceded Coast Salish territories. She has designed and stage managed for many different shows, including SFU Repertory Dance in 4 Views, Star Stuff and Small Town Hoser Spice, Rice and Beans, Still the Kettle Sings by Plan Z Theatre, Ascension, SFU Dance, and A Night at the Rose-Colored Discotheque, Vancouver Fringe. Linnea graduated from SFU in spring of 2018 and then began working at an apprenticeship program at Pacific Theatre. During this time, Linnea has had the honor of assistant stage managing Kim's Convenience, directed by Caitlin Williams, and stage managing The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, directed by Sarah Rogers. Next up, we are joined by Peter Abando. Peter has a selfie with and taken by Lin-Manuel Miranda, has conducted and played piano with Broadway musicians in New York City, laughed with Jonathan Groff, and not too long ago, sat on his couch with Christine Daae from the North American tour, watching silly videos on her phone. Peter's credits include the Ovation-nominated Connected the Musical, Whirlwind Theatre, the Jessie-nominated Edges, 2 Monkey Productions, Spring Awakening with Phantom Moon Collective, Dear Evan Hansen with Laughing Matters Theatre, 9 to 5 at Capilano University, and Amelie with West Moon Theatre. Peter regularly conspires with Jennifer Pulak, Chris Lamb, and Nicole Roberge. And last, but certainly not least, we are joined by Paige Fraser. Paige Fraser is an actor, singer, and dancer raised on Vancouver Island. Credits include What If with Green Thumb Theatre, Jessie Award nomination, congratulations. Bad Hat Theatre's Peter Pan, Carousel for Young People, and Coriolanus with Bard on the Beach, Cabaret Studio 58, Ovation Award winner, 42nd Street with Tuts, and Rock of Ages with the Arts Club, Ovation Award nomination. She is a graduate of Capilano University and Studio 58, and was the recipient of the Lloyd Nicholson Memorial Scholarship. Paige is dedicated to listening, amplifying, and learning within her life and her workspaces. Welcome, Linnea, Peter, and Paige. It is such a pleasure to have you here tonight. First off, I would like to check in with each of you and hear about what life has been like since the beginning of the pandemic. I know we all had performances get canceled, so what has that been like? And tell me about if you're able to work in some capacity since then. You can go ahead and unmute yourself now, and whoever wants to start off can jump right in.
I'll jump in. Let's see, since the pandemic kind of isolation period started, I feel like the first week or so was me kind of like waiting to get calls that things were being canceled and postponed. So it was a very sad first week for sure. And there's definitely been moments since. For the most part, I've been very privileged to be able to benefit from CERB, the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit. So I've been very thankful for that because I've been out of work for almost 2 months. I just started a new job with the Arts Club as part of their education and community outreach specialist team. They've been really great at getting some money together so that they could employ some of the artists who they weren't able to employ for their contract. So that's been really nice. Before then, it was a lot of Animal Crossing and cleaning my house.
Fantastic.
So I also do office administration for Pacific Theatre now. I'm their box office manager, and then I also do some other like just office administration detail work. So luckily I was able to transition to working from home pretty quickly. And yeah, it's been a lot of policy making on my end. I am the collect all of the COVID information person and distills it down into Word docs that I then distribute among my office with information and things, and lots of surveys to our audience. I also basically spent the entire beginning, the first like 2 months of quarantine, contacting every single one of our patrons and offering them, complimentary tickets in replace of shows that were canceled, refunds, asking if they'd be willing to turn their tickets into donations, things like that. So lots of office busy work, which has meant not a lot of time for sitting around and making things. But that's where I feel most comfortable. So
that makes sense. What about you, Peter?
I'm in a very interesting situation because I'm a school teacher, so I'm technically categorized as an essential worker as well. The beginning of the whole lockdown quarantine thing was great for me because it was quiet and I had nothing to do, and because I was supposed to be playing for a chorus line at CAP with Sean Henry and the gang there, but and of course all my gear was stored up there, so I had nothing. I had my acoustic piano in the room, but as soon as spring break was over, it went in overdrive because I had to adapt all of my on-site and in-person and like singing and sharing things and touching things that other people have touched, kind of learning, and completely switch it around to online, which was basically been like 24/7 designing lesson plans, recording myself, teaching the lessons, recording demos. So it's been I'm an accompanist, I'm a piano player, but now I've learned all the whole, hey, this is how you produce a video for mass consumption kind of thing. So yeah, learning what's the whole concept, invention, necessity, that sort of thing. It's been crazy and busy, and I'm actually looking forward to the end of the school year so I can put my feet up and maybe watch some more TV. But yeah, lots of stuff, tons of online collaborations, lots of video exchange, so much.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting time because we're all forced to adapt to whatever we're doing, and we're all kind of learning together. So my next question, Linnea, you touched on it a little bit actually, but for many performers, we are used to extraordinarily busy schedules. And with this pandemic, we've actually been forced to slow down and take a break to a certain extent, in that we can't go into our theaters, go into our places of work. But I just wanted to know, are you using this time to work on anything in particular, or kind of just taking it slow and trying to adapt to our new normal? Linnea, do you want to start us off?
Yeah. I started by kind of feeling the pressure of like, oh, I actually have this downtime now. I should use it to do some of the creative projects I've always said I was going to do, but never found the time to. And in now having time, I was hitting the wall of, I have time, but like the way that I received this time was so in a way traumatic. It's traumatic time that we are currently living through. And so I found the process of creation actually really, really difficult. So I definitely took that first month and was like, I can't put pressure on myself to try and create right now. I feel like if I do that, I'm going to be dissatisfied greatly with what I make. I'm just not going to enjoy the process. Like, I can't create just because I have time. I need to do it because I have that feeling that you always have as an artist, where you're just like, yes, this is the thing that like is speaking to me right now. So yeah, I've gotten back, and now that things have slowed down and that work is especially slowed down, now that we're kind of in this summer period of just like waiting and seeing, it is like, I'm finding like, oh, I can actually start dancing again. I actually have motivation to do playwriting again. So that's been really, really nice. But yeah, it's definitely has been a learning process to get to a place of creation during this time. I couldn't just jump right into it.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Paige, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, creation wise, I feel kind of that's where my brain goes to. And that's been really comforting lately. Like, I think within the first couple of days, I picked up my ukulele, which I was on tour right before the pandemic really hit Vancouver and everything kind of shut down. And I hadn't had it with me for well over a month. So I got to pick my ukulele up again, and little things like that. Like, I started kind of like composing little songs here and there, even just like little pieces of text or a poem I wrote. very quickly I found that there's a lot of other actory type people who are like begging for that kind of connection again. So I've joined a couple different play reading groups. One of them is working through all of Shakespeare's works, which has been really fun because I love Shakespeare, and his texts are so focused on the words. And I think sometimes when I jump into a show or you jump into a rehearsal process, it's easy to jump those 3 steps ahead, trying to think about like, what's it going to look like on opening? What's it going to look like, and how fast can we get there? And this has really helped me focus back on words and text again, because we don't have that same kind of connection when you're working through a Zoom camera, and it's more about the words and listening versus other things that I feel like can sometimes get in the way. So it's in ways it's been helpful. Not always. It's also, there's long stretches of time where I'm like, I just want to sit in the sunlight in a park and think about everything I'm not doing right now. But the days when I can push my couch and do a dance class or play a little song, adapt a sonnet, is really, really quite lovely.
That's
and
really
finding
fantastic
everyone else
to hear.
Yeah.
Finding those little paths to connection in the midst of all this. Yeah. All right, Peter.
Yeah. I have, I know, Linnea, we've worked on shows before, and Caitlin, we've worked with Paige, we've been on the same productions before, but I found this is like the 2 weeks in March, it's like nothing, and I thought, wait, I need to experience this.
Mm-hmm.
I need to know what this is like. and that was, it was sort of like this forced wonder of, oh, so this is what it's like when I'm not rushing from gig to gig to gig and then finding time to sleep and eat. But then, like, I'm right back at it. It's you know, full on 100% production. Probably no, it's higher. It's higher than that. It's 100. It's more than 100%. But I'm actually in the midst of composing 2 musicals. I've been asked about a third, and I just got a request this week about potentially doing music direction, but I'm not so sure. I mean, the rest of my family works in healthcare, so I get a lot of like what's going on in the hospitals. So I personally, I'm not sure if any of these proposals are actually feasible as of right now, because they're looking in the next, like, early in the fall. I'm like, are you sure? We'll see. I mean, you know, I'll keep listening to Dr. Henry's alerts and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a busy time, but the downtime is lovely, because then I don't have to go anywhere. I can sit at home and, you know, like watch Netflix, or just or, you know, make myself a, you know, experiment in the kitchen, play and make a new meal. I mean, that's creative, right?
That is totally creative.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a really interesting time of limbo for us as we're waiting to hear what happens next. But in the meantime, something that a lot of people have been doing right now is trying to bring theater online. So I want to talk about that because I think it's really interesting. And I don't know about you guys, but I have read about 1 million think pieces about whether or not it's worth it to try and translate theater online. How can we do that? What gets lost? All of that sort of stuff. And a lot of performers I know have gone into this sort of creative overdrive, filming and creating new content, doing playwriting groups, all that sort of stuff, while some other people are taking a step back and waiting it out until they can physically get on stage again, because they don't think it's worth it or have the mental capacity to do anything else. So I want to kind of delve into that for a minute, because I think it's a really interesting new way we're using this medium. Peter, I actually wanted to start with you and ask about what the experience has been translating what you do in the teaching and collaborating online. So what can you accomplish with it? What are its limitations that you've noticed? And just how has that felt for you?
It's interesting. I mean, there was that study. I don't know if you guys have heard of, like, the Khan Academy, right? That was online. You can just go and watch videos and learn things like that. So there are some elements of, like, working on, you know, text from a script or music from a musical, where the online thing is actually really efficient, in terms of just like learning the material and getting it in your brain and getting it in your body. The only problem is, like, the amount of prep time for any instructor is just enormous. right? Something that I could teach in about 5 seconds in person, I have to do online. I have to think about how do I deliver this? So often there's like 3, 4, sometimes 5 hours of prep for a lesson that we could do. Like if we were all in the same room, I could like, okay, here's 5 minutes, let's go. And but that's definitely not the way. Online accompaniment is, unless you've got like a ridiculously good, or you're paying oodles of money for high-speed internet, is almost impossible. Like, I mean, if I play a tune right now here at this piano over Zoom, the chances of you guys being able to sing in sync with it is like next to zero, right? So a lot of it's like sending accompaniments, and that's been a lot of what I've done for people who've asked about like coachings and audition prep, which I've continued to do over the quarantine and the shelter in place thing. So, I mean, I'm recording lots of piano pieces, or like working on harmonies with people. I mean, I was working with a woman who was in one of the Jersey Boys productions that eventually went up on Playbill, and we were working on harmonies for Jersey Boys, and that was just cool. It's like, oh, we're doing this over FaceTime. All right. Yeah. That's the interesting part about this, is I can coach people from anywhere now, like just all over the world, which is really very cool. And people who I would normally not be able to coach because they're either, like Paige was like on tour, or they're away. But like, oh, right, we have this technology, and now we're sort of forced to learn it, what we can do, and the whole collaboration things. So like people will, I love the openness. It's like, hey, I need help. I need to learn this thing, or I want to sing this tune. And everybody, I don't know how many of my friends have recorded songs or collaborated with their fellow performers and musicians. I mean, I lost track of how many I did when you asked me about, oh, what are some things you've done recently? And I sent you this list of videos, and I realized that's not even half of it. Yeah, so it's wild. It's sort of like learning the tricks of the trade of the recording world and then applying it to live. So what can we learn from the people who work in studios? Like, what do session musicians and people who do voiceovers and stuff like that? What's the efficiency that they have that we can sort of steal for live performance? And what sort of tricks and hacks can we nick from those worlds? Yeah, I mean, it's nice to have decent gear on you, and I've been able to play some repertoire that I never would have even thought of otherwise. But yeah, it really is a whole paradigm shift. Like, my brain is still not entirely caught up with it yet. So yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. It's a lot. It's still changing. I mean, the goalposts are still moving.
Yeah, exactly. Paige, I would love to hear more about the online play readings you've been doing, because I think that's really interesting. Also, you just inherently have this limitation now set on you that you can't take up physical space when you're acting. You're purely digital. You only have whatever you have in your frame. So what's that been like?
It's been fascinating. As I said before, it's been a lot of focusing back on text and listening, even if that delay is a real thing. But playing off what you can hear has been really interesting, and almost like a whole new lesson in and of itself. I did this reading probably a month ago or so, and it was called The Stone Face, and it was all about Buster Keaton and his life when he worked on the film with Samuel Beckett. And Buster Keaton is famously a very physical comedian slapstick actor. And so I was portraying like the young 20s Buster Keaton, very physical. How are we going to do this over Zoom? Two parts of that. How do we do all this physical business? There was a lot of mime work, a lot of physically handing props to and from people between the show, but also there was 4 time zones within the one show. So we had an actor in New York, an actor in Toronto, someone in Calgary, and then a couple of us in Vancouver. So we were working with 4 different time zones, 4 different times, 4 different places, with some people who I greatly respect. And so we spent a morning, it was 10 a.m. Vancouver time, to try and like make it even for everyone. And we went through like all these physical bits that we had to do. And I kind of worked with like, okay, well, I can't do what I normally would. So like, what can I do? Like, where can I pop up and use this as part of a gag? Where can I mime something and let that be effective? How can I use this guy as part of that kind of relationship with an audience? It's definitely been a learning curve. I would say the first few were difficult because I kept thinking about the things I didn't have and the things that I couldn't do the same. But the more that I had fun with the idea of this being more of like camera work or film work and focusing on what I could use, turning something totally random into a prop, like, I don't know, that I probably, like this, like what can I turn into something I can use in my next scene? It's an essential oil, or maybe it's like a thing for my hair. And that's been really fun, and kind of those kind of spontaneous moments where I miss my audience, and that part's been really sad. But what can I use around here that's more like a kid playing in a playroom?
Yeah, that's really a really interesting way to look at it. I think these forced limitations that we're working in are going to create some really interesting works of theater out of this. And Linnea, I'm really excited to have you on here. I specifically wanted to have somebody who worked kind of behind the scenes on the production side of shows, because actors, are pretty easily able to, oh, I'll just film something and throw it up. But what you do for stage management, how's that worked? Like, what are your thoughts about if that's even possible to move something like production design and stage management into an online space? Or is that something that's just gonna have to wait until we're all back in the theater together?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I thought about this a lot, and like, because producers for online content exist, and like a lot of what they do does have a one-for-one translation to what I do. But there's also a lot of aspects about what I do that doesn't happen in that world. So things like, so one of a stage manager's main jobs during the rehearsal period is to track things like blocking, to track where props go, track where costumes go, have this massive binder that is the keeper of all of this sacred knowledge that has to do with objects and bodies living in a physical space. And like, where is the space for that when we're talking to each other through webcams? It's been an interesting time for designers, especially. I think a lot of really great designers in the city have come out with some really amazing work of just like picking a script and sketching up a concept for it, or like making little maquettes, or like figuring out how to build stages in corners of their rooms and how to light them. And all that work has been so engaging. But in terms of like the kind of brainy paperwork trail that like stage managers are known for, having these like perfect color coded just books filled with all this physical information, it's hard to find space for that. And so yeah, I think that there is a way to do it, but I don't know what it is. And like, there is something uniquely special about the act of stage management being an act of like being being a very present person in the room who is like watching and listening so intently that they can gather all of this information. Yeah, it is a very special thing to me, and I'll be very excited to do it again. I miss, as I told my mom on the phone the other day, I miss herding cats.
Yes, the cats miss being herded. Oh man, so that actually leads me really well into my next question, because I've made a couple jokes about, next year's Fringe Festival, if it happens, we'll see a bunch of one-woman shows about like, oh, my time in quarantine. But in all honesty, like, has the pandemic changed the way that you view live performance? And has it influenced what you think is unique or important about live performance, and what distinguishes it from, say, an online play?
Yeah, the pandemic has definitely made me more conscious about accessibility of theater, which is like been a really important discussion that's been happening over the last few years about, the act of recording plays for distribution afterwards. Or there's been a lot of talk with Broadway, especially about like getting that material recorded and out to the public, because Broadway can in times be incredibly elitist if you don't have the money to fly to New York to go and see these fantastic shows. And there is something really sacred about the act of assembly in theater, and like gathering in that space and sitting all as one and breathing collectively to take in the story. But like not everyone has that option. And I think the quarantine has made me, like me and some members of my community, very, very aware that now we also don't have that option. And so going forward from this, that is something we have to keep in mind going forward. I don't think we can go back not acknowledging that we for a time experienced theater as inaccessible. So I do think like this has definitely shifted the way I view live performance in terms of what needs to adapt for a future where it can be accessible to everybody.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting take on it. Paige or Peter, did one of you want to jump in on that?
I mean, I just want to support everything that you just said. I think it echoes a lot of things that I've been feeling, but not being able to put to words. Yeah, thank you for saying that. That was really, really, yeah. I'm gonna go off on my own side tangent in a second. But I think it's also really interesting, this idea of what we're gonna do when we do move forward, and having to acknowledge where we've been, where we haven't been the most accessible and open community and arts form, and where that has to go in lots of different ways. And that's been, I think, very important as well. On a more like internal Paige note, it's made me kind of look forward to it again. Not that I never didn't, but there's definitely some days where theater's also my job and I love it. It's my first and foremost love, but there's some days where I wake up and I go, okay, it's time for rehearsal. Here we go. Yeah. But there's those shows where like you get to the end and you're like, oh, thank goodness, I'm gonna go home. But like I would give everything in my bank account and anything in this room to be able to be in that place again. So it's made me go, okay, check yourself, Paige, you love this. So yeah.
Peter?
Oh yeah, I mean, no, absolutely. What Linnea and Paige have said, it's absolutely the same thing. I mean, it's so more precious and meaningful that way. When you're away from it. Yeah, the concept, Linnea, I had the same ideas, like the idea to be together and to breathe in a piece of art. Like it's huge, it's enormous. It's I don't know. I mean, you can't put a price on it, but it's something that I think for people who aren't performers, I mean, we can feel it. Even anybody who's been involved, like you can feel that when that anticipation on the first read, or the first time the orchestra, first time you have Sitzprobe and everybody, you get to hear everything. You're like, oh my God, it's actually happening, which is something that like we actually got to with the chorus line. We actually did Sitzprobe, and then it got shut down. So we had gotten so much closer, and you're like, oh, we don't get to actually do the show, and it's crushing. Like it feels, there is literally a void somewhere on my body, like that, like there's something that I haven't done yet. It's incomplete. But to be able to like just even the four of us to just meet up and like do a read or sing a song together would be, oh man, yeah, what I wouldn't give for that right now. It's huge. It's huge. The nice thing is that there are a lot of people doing stuff about that. A couple weeks ago, I was on a Zoom call with, I don't know how many people from around the world. Mostly it was theater makers of color, and we were all talking about how things are changing and how to move forward, especially with the whole idea of a pandemic and sheltering in place. And then on Monday, I was actually at Presentation House Theater in North Van, and they were talking about, they were looking to get people together to talk about and discuss and roundtable ideas moving forward in a way that is both accessible and pays artists. And like, oh, okay, let's get some good brains on this, because that's really important. We need to get that going, even if it doesn't mean it starts tomorrow. We need to have a plan. We need to think about it and figure out a way that we can, share our art, but also, also feed ourselves. It would be nice to do both.
Yeah. We all
Absolutely.
deserve to be paid.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, and the funny thing about this whole pandemic is like, what are people turning to now? Oh yeah, everything that we do. It's just prepackaged, but it's all of our work. All of our work is all over the place now, and some of it a lot of it myself. I'm happy to share it with people for free because I'm lucky enough. Like I'm in a situation where I can still bring in a paycheck, but not everybody can, and we need to get we need those people to be properly supported. We need them because we need them. We really need them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people have realized just how essential the arts and entertainment can be right now to nourish people's souls and help them get through such a traumatic time. And then this kind of segues really well into my next question, which is, we've all seen all the headlines about, oh, so many performance venues won't survive the pandemic. Are you worried that there's going to be less theater in our city in this? Or are you also thinking about this as an opportunity to move away from traditional venues and explore maybe outdoor, immersive, or unique spaces that can accommodate social distance requirements?
Yeah, just because I work in the office of a professional theater company, I've been privy to a lot of knowledge about kind of what the talks are with things like Canada Council and the government of BC about like what the support's going to be towards the art community going forward. And it's stressful, and it is a worry about who's going to survive this. I mean, one of the things to keep in mind with theater is it's all upfront costs. So like, you pay your actors up front, you pay for the set up front, you pay for all of this, the royalties to do a show up front, and then you have to sit back and kind of hope that people come to see it and that you can make a profit on it. Fingers crossed, or in most cases, break even. And that's really scary in this time because it's like, oh man, I don't even know if I have the money to cover the basic things that I need to put on a show. Because a large portion of what I was counting on got taken away at the end of the year. So that's very stressful. And like, I'm seeing the effects of that throughout our community right now in these conversations. But I am also very hopeful because this like current generation of emerging artists have been so amazing and so creative and have already done some such really great untraditional work. Like last year we see it a lot in Fringe. But last year in Fringe, I want to highlight Where the Quiet Queers Are, which took place in a parking garage. And then the year before that, I want to highlight Slumber Here, which took place in a park. So like the groundwork for that sort of like work that can accommodate social distancing and is in untraditional venues is already there. So I do know that like there is that underlying creativity that will like come out when it's like, all right, like there's the possibility that these venues won't be able to accommodate us anymore. What other options are there? Because artists are always so creative. Like at the end of the day, we're always just so creative. So like, I feel like we can make any situation really work if we,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and we're back. Paige or Peter, do one of you want to jump on?
Yeah, I think that the form we're in, the artistic form we're in, is going to survive in some way, whatever that may look like, whether that's in I'm wary to use the word traditional theater spaces when we think of a theater of like, the covered room in the dark house, but in the ones that we have mostly around town that we usually see, whether that's removing more seats and making more physically distant space available, whether that's with these site-specific works that are always, and I think we have such a great city for site-specific works specifically. Like I think we have so many great opportunities, and we have certain companies and certain creators who have, as you said, already created those pieces. And I think that there's even more room for that. So I'm so excited to see where that goes. But also the digital market with how we stream theater. I mean, that's kind of technology and conversation's been happening since probably the 80s when it comes to live streaming and broadcasting work that way. It totally just left my mind. There was a show near the very beginning of the sheltering at home period that had just started, and it was doing a lot of live stream productions from their space that you could buy a virtual ticket to. Does anyone remember what that was?
Mine did it from the show at the Culch, the one that was about the Minecraft. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if we remember that those kind of pieces, like there is a world for that. And I think we can do that as long as I think our audiences as well as our creators are ready to accept that. And I think moving into wherever the next couple months takes us, if people are open to try something a little bit different and know that the world has changed and so art's had to change. And if we're ready for that, I absolutely think that there's going to be a really interesting mix of everything we thought we had and everything that's going to be this new fun world. I'm really excited with where it's going to go. And I'm not sure what it looks like, but I'll be there.
We're figuring it out.
Yeah.
Eventually. Peter, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think like any time that you're sort of faced with a crisis, there's a chance for transformation. I think that's one of the things that I think artists are really good at. Like, you give us a problem and we're going to figure out some crazy way, some harebrained scheme to figure it out. Like, it's the sort of thing that we do just because, I don't know, we think it's fun, or we're just nuts. I love it. I love it. I mean, I'm a musical improviser. So the idea of like figuring out, oh, hey, there's probably a way to, not have a script or a score and get a whole bunch of people and musicians in a room and make an entire 90-minute musical and from nothing. Okay, I mean, if we can do that, we could probably do anything. Because people believe it and they go, you wrote that, right? And we're like, nope, we had no idea what we were doing until you gave us a title. So, I mean, if that is possible, I know theater artists all over the world can do it. One of the people who curated the meeting of a worldwide theater performers, his name is Peter Kuo, and he's the Associate Conservative Director, I think that is his title, at the American Conservative Theater in the States in San Francisco. And now people are going to him. He's a friend of mine. I met him, by accident, a bunch of Asian American and one Asian Canadian performer in a hotel lobby. So we all became friends. He's been developing theater for the Zoom and for Zoom and similar platforms. And he's already done 2 plays that have premiered on Zoom and have recouped their costs. So it is absolutely doable. He's actually doing workshops right now, and I think people are lining up to pay him to. I hope, because he deserves it, to show his his tricks and his ways of making live theater work on a digital platform. So is it possible? Absolutely. I think when more of the restrictions are lifted, we're going to have, like Paige said, absolutely jumping on that, is that we're going to have this sort of hybrid world where we can combine all of the amazing things we figured out plus everything we've learned from before and pull it all together, tied up into some crazy Gordian knot that everybody wants to pay for. I would say, as a musician, it's nice because I don't necessarily have to do a whole lot here. I can just sort of sit here and play my instrument. But yeah, to be able to get into the space with everybody and figure out a way to create that bubble of joy again. I mean, even if it's separate bubbles all connected somehow. Like one of those, bubbles that sort of, they all stick together and they just travel together. I don't know, something bizarre like that. But either way, I think I am excited to see what happens afterward. Am I worried about less live theater? Maybe a little, but I think in a way we're going to learn what's going to captivate our audiences in a new way. I mean, I think there's a possibility that we're going to create better theater this way.
Fantastic. Okay, and I just have one last quick question before I see we've got a couple of questions on Facebook. But this has really been an uncertain time for artists, and this has been, I mean, a traumatic experience for the world, essentially. So I just wanted to ask if you could just share one little moment or bubble of joy that's been getting you through right now.
This past weekend was my mom's 60th birthday, and so I went to my home's on the island. So I went back to Vancouver Island for the weekend, and we surprised my grandmother, who lives in like, I kind of call them like hotels, but for retired people, because they like get their meals and they have like their little apartments. And she's been pretty shut up alone for the last little bit, and we surprised her with a little socially distant visit. And so I was outside in the little area in the garden where they have all the chairs separated by 6 feet, and I was just perched in my little chair, and we brought her outside, and she took a look at me and she's like, "Oh yes, hello," and she just burst into tears. And the women who work at the front office of the building had made these 7-foot long poles with hands on the end of them, with like little gloves on them, so that their residents can give people hugs. So I got to have a socially distant hug with my grandma, and that was like the best thing that happened in the last 2.5 months.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. How creative. Wow.
It's amazing. It's so good.
Yeah. All right. Peter, Linnea?
Definitely what's giving me joy. I mean, the fact that I can still, like, without anyone, I mean, I haven't had a complaint yet, but I can sit at my piano in my apartment and just improvise, and I can lose myself in my music, which is wonderful. I'd say the thing that's giving me joy is being able to see my folks, you know, with Phase 2, and being able to, you know, like even just, you know, hang out and chat for a couple hours and, you know, have a cup of tea, that sort of thing. Like just the little things that I would always put off anyways because I was on some gig or in some rehearsal. So being the family time has actually been, yeah, so wonderful. So I mean, really, that's definitely my source of joy right now. Yeah, simple as that. Being able to see the fam and hang out and, you know, sort of just chat about whatever.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I've reconnected with some people that I otherwise hadn't really been making time for. Like my best friend of all time, he lives out in Toronto, and he's doing his PhD, and I work in theater, and we're on completely different time zones, so we rarely talk much anymore. And we're definitely those best friends that's like we can go months without talking and then we'll pick it up right where we were. But like it's been great to do things like that. And like I've reached out to high school friends I haven't talked to in years that I used to be super close with. And the people that I create with and collaborate with a lot, I feel like our relationship has gotten a lot deeper and more complex in like all of those good juicy ways I enjoy deep, complex, creative relationships. So it's been like a really great time of like reflecting on those relationships that are important for me and actually being able to make time for them and realizing that like that's a thing that I want to continue to prioritize going forward, is not like letting my relationships fall by the wayside anymore. Because yeah, it's very easy to in theater when you have non-theater relationships where it's like you are best friends while you're working on that show and then you don't talk for like 6 months afterwards, and then you work on a show again and you're best friends again. So it's been nice to continue to fuel those relationships without the incentive of a show to keep doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right, and now we've got a couple of questions from the people watching on Facebook. So one of them is, moving forward, if the new normal includes more online content, would any of you think about including some of the things Peter mentioned, such as rehearsals with the orchestra or other ways to try and get across the emotion involved in the creation of theater? Does anyone have any quick thoughts about that?
Could you say it just one more time for me, please?
Yeah, so essentially it boils down to, do you think if we're going to be moving forward and creating online content right now, would it be interesting or helpful to include more of the behind the scenes creation side of the theater process, such as filming and streaming as its probe rehearsal, to help try and convey some of the emotion that goes behind the creation of theater?
I'd be down for that. I love that kind of, as an audience member and an artist, I love both of those things. So I absolutely love that.
Yeah, and I think we
Yeah,
already oh, you go, Peter. I think we're starting to see people figure out how to navigate that space, like figuring out how to have rehearsals online, how to start to integrate music, how to start to integrate design. Today, actually, Derek Chan and Rob Leveros, who are two theater makers in the city, did a talk with the Culture about work that they're currently doing. And it's like, yeah, the way that like they break down like how to adapt it for online was really, really fascinating. So like, yeah, you're starting to see it. It's starting to happen, and it's so exciting.
I think it's totally doable. I think just having done a lot of this sort of concept already, I think we need to be patient with ourselves, because it's amazing, but it takes a lot of time. So just the whole idea of putting together, I personally love the whole creation documentary of any show. It's just like it's like I nerd out on that stuff. It's like, how did they do that? Like, even if it's something as simple as like a really cool costume change, or how this musician suddenly appeared on the stage. Like, I love that stuff. So I mean, I would eat that up. Absolutely. I would absolutely love to see that. Like, oh hey, here's bloopers from our Zoom rehearsal. Like, I would watch that. I would absolutely watch that. It would be so much fun, and we could give ourselves time to create and find the joy and the silliness in a whole new way of creating. So I think that would be fun. It's definitely possible. The idea of adding like music and creating lights, I mean, via the online platform, I think it's totally doable. I think we have the minds and the bodies and probably the equipment in somebody's basement to do it. So yeah, absolutely. I would totally nerd out over any of that, behind the scenes, show me how you did it stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be really fantastic, because, while we're putting all this content online, there is, a big distinction from film, because we're not film actors necessarily. So the idea of taking a live theater and what's special about a live theater performance and translating it online is going to look different from film. So how do we find that distinction, I think, is really, really cool. This question is for Paige, and it's, what steps are you taking as a professional actor to keep afloat in the COVID world?
Ooh, to keep afloat. Artistically, it's, as I was mentioning, a lot of readings, and I've been taking a lot of classes, whether that's via dance classes, via Harbor Dance. I also have a great network of peers and colleagues who we've created a lot of little kind of groups within ourselves. So like there's a group of, I want to say like, it must be like 10 or 12 like dancing ladies that have just been keeping me sane the last like 2.5 months. And we meet twice a week over Zoom. We take turns teaching a class, and that's been the best. And we get to learn off of each other. We get to have some experience teaching classes. The readings, when I've done play readings, it's been great to kind of keep those parts that of acting, like listening and cold reading, which is always something that I have to work on. That's being kept up to snuff. And there's another one. Classes. And also letting myself have a break, because I think as artists, it's really easy to always want to have something on every burner at the same time, and being okay with having one or two of those burners empty right now has been really nice, because burnout is a very real thing. And if I burned out during a pandemic when there's no work, then that's a sign that I need to check in mentally about how I'm handling my work when we're not in a pandemic and we're not in this emergency situation. So finding that kind of balance has been really important.
Definitely. All right, this next question is for Linnea. Are there ways of advertising shows online that you're looking at specifically to get traction for online theater productions?
Yeah, I mean, luckily, like, I guess it's interesting right now because I have like no shows to advertise at all. But I think there are many more smarter marketing people than I who can speak much better on this than I can. But I do think it always starts with like just get it out there. Just like get it out there, put it on every social channel, and like, yeah, especially right now, that like self-promotion game is the best tool that you have, because I have been finding that like this community wants to support each other, and like the people who often come to our shows and all of that want to support us as well. So if they know you have something going on, they'll come out for you, because we want to be upholding each other right now as much as we possibly can. And we don't have our kind of traditional mediums of like Vancouver Presents and Georgia Straight. Like it's those mediums are not gone, but definitely have had to shift the way that they present their content as well. And they're trying to navigate this just as much as we are. So yeah, if you've got any projects right now, just, yeah, get it out there. There's so many good art groups, and like on Facebook, like Vancouver has a lot of like good little like acting groups. Like get into those, throw your work up. Like, yeah, like just make a Facebook event and post it every couple days. Go for it.
Totally.
Definitely. All right, and this last question is for Peter, but I think I'm going to open it up to all of us, and it could start an entire other session of the artist sessions, but I think it's important to touch on. So this is, what steps are you taking as a music director in light of the social movement that's happening around the world right now to make sure our spaces are more inclusive and diverse?
It's
a big question.
That's a fantastic,
yeah,
fantastic. Something that we've addressed in the teaching world already, right? Because we've got someone speaking constantly in front of a whole group of people for an extended period of time. I know a lot of private music teachers and private voice instructors are either doing stuff that's specifically online. In terms of sharing and learning, that doing that rehearsal stuff. The tough part is synchronization. That's the biggest issue, right? If you can be in a room and distant from each other, like I said, it's okay for one person. Say you've got an accompanist in your show, and everybody is sort of socially distant in a room. The big issue still is dropout transmission, so you can hear the music. Maybe you can record on your phone, and then you can go back and practice it in your own space, and then techniques like that we use, breathing techniques would be a big one, because absolutely, as this is a respiratory syndrome, it's the sort of thing that where either we all practice with our faces to the wall, and we just hope that our everything works in the room, even though we're not facing each other. But of course, that's a huge thing when you're performing as a group. The PPE, the stuff that's being used by instructors and kids in schools right now, is working pretty well. I know from my own experience in the last month is that the policies are like, just like if we're going to work, right? If you're sick, stay home, right? We understand, but if people have their temperature checked and they've been in quarantine, there's no symptoms, the idea of us getting into a room and opening our bubbles that way, it's not zero risk, but it is low risk, which is good to know. And oh man, like how do we move forward in the whole rehearsal process? I wish I had more answers, but I'm still discovering them right now. I mean, I don't teach a choir right now. I don't do anything with the kiddies singing, even though that little kids have the according to the stats, have a lower possibility of transmission to each other. But I'm not allowed to teach a song, even if it's just me singing from behind a hand. I'm not even allowed to do that. So I would say, if we're working from, it would be like a distance production where someone is away for some reason, and we all have to send in recordings and practice. I guess kind of like a boy band. So, you know, you get from the producer, you get your tracks, you get to hear everybody else's, you know, I'll learn my part. And then hopefully when we're in the space and we're in a safe zone that we've all learned our parts. But of course, that's just the music element of it. That's not the artistic part of it. So in terms of the music director's job, that's in the air. Like teaching music is one thing, but shaping it and which is my favorite part of being a music director. It's not learning. It's like, how do I want this phrase to go? How do I want that particular word to be emphasized? All that sort of stuff is so much an in-person thing. It's something that I still definitely do not have the answers for yet. Even with all the online coachings, it's just it's one of those things where all the things you can read, even just us face to face on Zoom, it's not exactly the same as performance. And like Paige said, that delay makes a huge difference. So yeah, I mean, I am very curious to see what's happening in terms of what restrictions are lifted and what is proven to be, you know, lower transmission for you know, a coronavirus or something, anything like that. So I am on the hunt for answers just as much as everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think one last thing to wrap up. We touched a little bit about accessibility in theater. Linnea, you brought that up and you were so eloquent about that. But I think right now, because of also the Black Lives Matter movement that's been happening, there's been a lot of shift in theater spaces for how we're viewing what we do, who we're accessible to, and who we're inviting to. So I know this could be a whole other discussion on its own, but I think if you guys have any last kind of final thoughts about moving forward, we've had this whole shift in the way that we create, produce, and interact with theater. What are your thoughts moving forward, how we can, coming out of this pandemic, also be more inclusive for diverse casts, both on and off the stage?
Yeah, I'll start by saying that I do identify as a mixed race Black woman. So this has been on my mind a lot, and kind of the way that it's arisen because of COVID, which has meant people have the time to be politically active in a way that is often taken away from us because of the requirements to be a part of, you know, working and making rent and all of those struggles that we have living in these big cities now, especially where rent hikes and things like that. Yeah, it's been an interesting time to both be just myself and in my body and my own entity, and also be a theater maker who works for a theater that is also trying to navigate this space of, oh, how were we complicit, and like grapple with the question of how were we complicit in the white supremacy culture that has supported this theater's growth throughout the years, and how do we start to work towards being actively anti-racist. So I actually partly find COVID to be a little bit of a blessing in that way, because theaters have the space right now, especially to be like, oh, there is time to actually sit with these uncomfortable feelings that might come up from this conversation and begin to do the work that is required in order to make these spaces actively anti-racist. Because it is not enough just to say, oh, we have a certain amount of BIPOC people who are on our stage. It is working towards actively decolonizing the actual rehearsal space and then the performance space and things like that. So yeah, it's often weird how in history these cultural shifts kind of pair up with these other cultural shifts, and that's been really fascinating. But yeah, I think I definitely am very grateful for this time to be able to do that work, both as a member of the theater community and as an individual. That's been like a nice little blessing in disguise as well, if we want to keep talking about like little secret blessings.
That's fantastic. Linnea, thank you for sharing that. I think we have time if you guys have like a last little quick thing to say, but then we've been talking for an hour and I could talk for so much longer with you guys, but I have to wrap up. All right. Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to bounce off of what Linnea was saying. As well as theater spaces, I think it's so important the work that theater schools and training facilities are being held accountable for, and how they're also being asked to do that same work. Yeah, and that blessing, I think, is that blessing in disguise moment to sit in the discomfort of being a white actor, and where I have failed and where I'm going to learn and be better. Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that I'm a
thank you for that.
Yeah, I can definitely jump on that. Like I said, it's I definitely agree with the whole blessing concept. It's just like, oh, I can sit here and think and acknowledge all the stuff that, you know, I've experienced and people I've worked with have experienced, and see. The funny thing is, sometimes as an accompanist, people forget you're there. They hear you, but they don't see you. And it reveals a lot. I mean, I'm lucky because I get to work in so many different spaces as a musician, and the questions that are around the diversity in the theater making world, just not just theater presenting fashion. So you know, when it's creative teams or groups of producers, I'm often in the room, and it's interesting what they say when they don't realize you're sitting there at the piano waiting for the next person to come in. It is a time for change, and I think a lot of people have that on their minds right now. And I think as long as we're all acknowledging that, and I think as long as we're all giving space for Black, Indigenous people of color to share their experiences, and for us all to listen, right? I mean, I cannot identify with someone who's Black or someone who's Indigenous, but I can listen. And I think just like anything, like everything I tell my students, like if you're listening, you're probably doing more work than you realize. Not just hearing, but actually listening. But I mean, as a performer, I'm literally wearing a shirt that says "Yield to the art." So, you know, give space. You know, quite literally.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I mean, we tend to try to transmit truth in the work that we do, whether it's for entertainment purposes or for informative purposes, or, you know, usually some combination of the two. And I think if we're true to the message we're trying to deliver, and understanding how that applies to everyone, our audience, our performers, the people who are going to, you know, talk about it and review it, and the people who've made it, I think if we're honest with what those perspectives are and where they're coming from and where we should be going, I think we're on the right track, even if we're stumbling a little bit.
Stumbling forward is still stumbling forward.
Yeah. True.
Agreed.
Yes. Well, I just want to thank you all so much for joining me tonight. This has been a really, really fascinating discussion, and I'm so glad that you could be here for this. All right, let me just get my thing set up. There we go. We'll be back for the artist sessions next week with members of the 13 Feet Off the Ground Collective. And you can view our current virtual exhibitions, New Perspectives by Passionate Outdoor Painters, and Igniting Hope on our website, pomoarts.ca. We've also just launched an array of online art classes and summer camps, including ceramics classes that you can do from home, which is really, really exciting. And for more information, please visit us at pomoarts.ca. And before we leave, I'm going to ask Peter, since I know you're at your piano, if you wouldn't mind playing just a little music, a minute, 30 seconds, just to play us out for the night.
I would be happy to.
Thank you so much. All right. And thank you everybody who joined us. Yeah, please have a great rest of your evening.